to another episode of the SWYP Dental App's 7-Minute Supersonic Podcast. I'm here again with Rita Zamora, social media marketing expert. Actually, I called you an expert last time. This time I'm going to call you a guru, which
thank you.
is a word that is, I think people who are gurus don't like them, but I think sometimes it's appropriate. So we just have to go with it. So we were talking about the importance of social media for dentists, and about 10 years, social media has been being used in our industry. Let's talk about, specifically talking about dental practices. What would you say in your travels, percentage between dental practices that do it on their own or hire it out? What are you finding?
Oh my gosh, there is, I don't know the exact number, but I would say it's a higher number probably of those that are managing it internally, managing it themselves, and it's a smaller number that are hiring it out, but I think that number is continuing to grow. And the evolution that we've gone through is when Facebook pages were first released and social media was, introduced, there were a lot of practices that were totally, unaware of how everything worked. I mean, I remember a practice one time faxing me the screenshot of Facebook saying, we can't remember our password to log in. I was like, what's happening here? So, we really helped a lot of practices to get set up and get started and kind of handled everything for them early on. And then midway, we were like, you guys can do this. And they were figuring it out. And there was more online information available and tutorials, and practices kind of took it over themselves. But now the last few years, with the introduction of pay to play and knowing that you have to pay, Facebook and Instagram will be the same way soon to get visible, practices, some of them have become overwhelmed by it, or they just don't have the time or interest to continue to, maintain it. So they're starting to outsource more and more. So we're seeing a trend in that growing outsourcing.
Yeah, and that's kind of comes back around to the human cost of what, is your time worth and what is your staff's time worth. And if they're not really experts in that, are they really optimizing their time when they should be doing something else in the practice? So I think it started, we go back to the beginning of social media time 10 years ago. I think most practices said, I'll just figure this out on my own as the practitioner, or I'll get my front office, staff or my receptionist or somebody to handle it. And I think that probably worked in the beginning stages, probably okay, because there weren't a lot of people doing it and everybody was learning on the fly.
Yeah.
Now it's almost like its own sophisticated marketing channel that you have got to understand. And it's not, it's not like rocket surgery. It's not like anyone couldn't understand it, but you have to read about it. You have to stay up on top of it because it's constantly changing. So how does dental practice stay up on this?
Yeah, you really I do see some dentists out there that are managing their own social media, and they're doing a great job of it, and they're not taking away from their production or the success of their practice, because instead of going home and watching Netflix or, watching TV, and maybe they're doing it at the same time, right, they're kind of managing their social media. So they enjoy it and they fit it in that way. And that's awesome. And yeah, anybody can learn this on their own. My degree is not in Facebook. It's not in social media. I have a business degree from the University of Colorado with an emphasis in marketing, and all of the social media was self-taught. Right. And I have a team now of people that I work with, and even we are surprised sometimes. We're like, whoa, when did this come out? When did this change? Right. So, we can help practices get what they need to know faster and easier. But yeah, some practices are doing a great job just, being self-taught and diving in and figuring it out. And others are really struggling, even if they have millennial team members and they have an awesome practice. They just want that help. So it just depends.
And so what would you, if you were, and let's just say for the sake of this discussion, that half of dental offices are doing it on their own and half are hiring it out, of the ones that are doing it. We know that there are some that aren't, but the ones that are doing it on their own, how many hours a week do you think they need to put into it to be successful? Is it an hour a day? Is it 2 or 3 hours a day? Is it, what do you think it is?
Yeah, well, I think it's more important really to think about this on the front end, which is like looking at the month ahead. That's exactly what we do in our business. I've been telling people for years, if you are going to do this in your practice, we can tell you the exact system that it's going to take, because that's what we do in our business. is, it's June 29th right now. So we've already planned out our clients' content for the month ahead. We've done that, 2 weeks ago, looked at what procedures they want to be doing more of, who's their ideal patient, what do they want to be known for, how do they want to be perceived, and looking at investing a few hours in creating a strategy and planning what you want to promote for the month ahead. So then once you've done that, you've invested a few hours in doing that, depending on how many practices you have, on how competitive your area is, how large your practice is, of course, and what type of specialty you have. Ortho's going to take a lot more time than, a small aesthetic dentistry practice that's got a really unique niche. So, and then it might only take an hour a week for you to check in and make sure your posts are rolling out on schedule and kind of make tweaks and adjustments. So I'm trying to make the shift in practices mindset from it's 10 minutes a day to you really need to front load it, think about this. And then that way everything's, well thought out and pre-scheduled, and it's going to be more efficient and more effective that way.
Right. And so even a practice that outsources it or hires for some outside help still has to be involved. I mean, this isn't a send it off to somebody and let them handle it. And to me, that's kind of the best of both worlds, is let an expert help you plan it, organize it, keep you on track, right? Mm-hmm. Then the business owner, the dentist, the office manager, whoever it is at the practice, is still involved on certainly a weekly basis and then daily to sort of make sure that this is right. And I know my dentist, for example, runs a cleaning special or a whitening special once every few months that comes out on social, or he's got empty hygiene chairs and he says, you can come in, and there's different ways they can use it. He sometimes offers baseball tickets for a baseball team, things like, so I don't know that those are planned. I'm guessing some of those maybe they are, and some of them are and some of them aren't. They just go, I got these tickets and throw them out there. So there's a way to keep it fresh and lively, which then it doesn't seem quite as programmed, because once it becomes programmed, it probably becomes obvious that it's not genuine. And, one of the things we know about social media is it's got to be genuine. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So, you can plan ahead. And I think the difference is being authentic and being customized and personalized versus generic. That's the big difference. And the way that you do that is through photos. The big shift right now is in aesthetic, the way that things look. We're in a visual economy with the growth of Instagram, and people are looking for images. If you have a blurry, crummy image that's copyright protected that you snagged off of Google because you wanted to get, a specific picture versus taking your own and using the variety of different apps and filters that you can use. People are looking at that level of detail today, and not every practice has the time or interest to do that. So,
well, cool. All right, as we wrap up, one last question. Do you have any big success story you want to tell me about, how you took some dentist in Peoria who had one Facebook follower and turned them into the dentist of the stars that does cosmetic cases in Beverly Hills now?
Oh gosh, I think what we really enjoy is showing people how social media can really work in their favor, because we see so many practices that get messages from patients on a regular basis saying, I'm a new patient, do you have an opening this week? Or, if I become a patient, would you work with my insurance? Or even, my tooth is hurting from the crown you placed last week, what should I do? And, so we see more and more patients communicating, not just for marketing purposes, but just general communication purposes for social media. So for us, a big success story is shifting someone's mindset. And we had a father-son practice that came to us, and the son was new out of dental school, joining the practice, and the father said, I'm getting ready to retire. I don't have time to learn this social media. And son didn't want to be on social media because he's like, I don't want my college friends to find me. And, I don't want my social media past to catch up with me. And both of them were kind of dragging their feet. And I'm like, we have to do this. They're in a pretty high-tech area of the country. And so we drug them on board, kicking and screaming. And a couple weeks later, that a patient that came in, and they were asking every patient, tell us about how you found us and blah, blah, blah. And the woman said, I specifically really was drawn to a picture that you posted on Facebook, and their ears were like, what? And, you know, it was a picture of them together at a continuing education event. And she said, I like the idea of seeing a father and son working together, because the older Dennis could tell the younger one what he's learned over the years that you can't learn in school, and the younger one could teach the father about new technologies. And so then they were both sold, and that was a win for me, because I knew then they opened their minds to the opportunities.
Well, and that's a win across the board, because it's good for everybody, right? And that it's funny, most people would never have thought that. I would never think that until you just told me that story. I'm like, you know what? There is a very big value in finding a practice that's sort of being transitioned from older to younger, because they both have such different, unique skill sets. And social is the greatest way to get that out there, right? Mm-hmm. You can't do that. Sure. Do it in a radio ad or a TV ad, but social is even easier. Subconscious. Almost do it with pictures.
Yeah, also, instantly. Yeah.
Well, and so on top of that, a big success story is really just doing it. Everybody's going to have a different experience with social, but it will lead to engagement and new patients for sure. It's just a matter of getting the right program. So, thank you for your time, Rita.
Thank you.
Thanks again.